You are actively bleeding out your most precious resources because society has falsely convinced you that saying yes makes you inherently good and strong. Every single day you hand over pieces of your life to individuals who are simply testing how much of you they can take. The brutal reality is that your boundless generosity is not earning you respect. The more you give, the less you are actually respected. It is time to forcefully close the vault and stop allowing other people's priorities to quietly replace your own. Time is absolutely not just hours ticking away on a clock. It is your life in its most raw, unrecoverable form. Yet, this is exactly the first asset that people feel completely entitled to demand from you without a second thought. You hand away minutes and hours under the delusion that your supply is endless, failing to realize that every minute given is permanently lost. You have been conditioned to view your time as a public utility, rather than the strictly limited fuel of your own existence. The extraction of your time does not happen aggressively. It happens casually and politely, as if your existence is defaulted to serving their immediate needs. They ask for a quick call or a small favor, masking the danger of their request behind a veil of absolute reasonableness. By constantly surrendering to these minor interruptions, you silently teach others that your life is entirely flexible while theirs remains fixed. You are actively training people to treat your schedule as completely disposable. You must immediately recognize that whoever dictates your time eventually seizes total control of your focus, your energy, and your life's priorities. Your primary duty is to live with sharp, deliberate intention, not to constantly operate at the mercy of endless external interruptions. Protect your hours viciously, understanding that your time is not a favor you owe the world, but a highly guarded resource you must invest strategically. Give it deliberately, or the world will happily spend it all for you. People test the absolute limits of your boundaries entirely through your time, starting with minor assumptions of your availability. When you grant them unrestricted access, your schedule stops belonging to you, transforming you into a strictly reactive entity instead of a deliberate force. This constant availability silently establishes the toxic dynamic that their artificial urgency inherently matters significantly more than your core intentions. You become completely adjustable, actively abandoning your own goals simply to maintain the comfort of those around you. The inevitable result of this continuous self-abandonment is a deep, quiet resentment that violently poisons your internal state. You find yourself constantly drained, severely distracted, and hopelessly behind in your own life, entirely unable to pinpoint the exact source of your exhaustion. You operate under the deadly illusion that you're just being helpful, when in truth you're systematically eroding your own autonomy. You're mistaking your pathetic lack of boundaries for genuine kindness. To reclaim your agency, you must implement a brutal pause before ever giving a response to an external demand. If an interruption does not directly align with how you choose to live, deploy a calm, absolute boundary, without a single ounce of emotional cushioning or guilt-driven justification. Understand that people who respect you will instantly adjust, while those who exploit your lack of boundaries will vehemently resist. Use that exact resistance as critical information to expose the relationships that do not serve you. The most insidious threat to your sovereignty comes wrapped in the guise of the quick favor, a phrase designed specifically to bypass your defenses. These seemingly innocent requests are precisely how parasites normalize unlimited access to your mental bandwidth. They do not begin by asking for monumental sacrifices. They slowly condition you to accept a constant state of disruption. Every time you drop your focus to accommodate them, you violently fracture your own momentum. You fail to see that yielding to these small demands is not a harmless act of generosity. It is a profound failure of personal discipline. When you allow your mind to be mercilessly pulled in every direction, you forfeit your ability to execute deep, meaningful work. You become a chaotic, fragmented version of yourself, entirely incapable of producing anything of true substance. Your attention is fractured, your energy is scattered, and your ultimate potential is left completely unrealized because you could not ignore a notification. You must absolutely refuse to be instantly available, fundamentally understanding that not every external stimulus deserves your immediate response. Reclaiming your attention is the direct prerequisite to reclaiming your agency and stopping the cycle of living purely at the mercy of others' expectations. Let your silence or your delayed response act as an impenetrable wall that strictly dictates the terms of engagement. Your life must be a directed force, not a chaotic, open territory for anyone to trample. Being fundamentally disciplined with your time is absolutely not an act of selfishness. It is the ultimate declaration that you are a sovereign individual. You must evaluate every single request that threatens to pull you away from what matters with cold, calculated scrutiny, ignoring the polite packaging it comes in. Your daily schedule is the literal blueprint of your destiny, and right now you're letting amateurs scribble violently all over it. The quiet power of an unyielding boundary signals to the world that your existence has a definitive, immovable direction. When you say, "I cannot right now," or "that does not work for me," you do not owe anyone a courtroom defense or a lengthy explanation of your priorities. You must become entirely comfortable with the sheer discomfort of denying others access to your hours. Their disappointment is the required currency you must pay to purchase your own freedom. A life lived without boundaries is merely a life spent serving as an extra in everyone else's movie. When you forcefully protect your hours, you cease drifting and violently take the wheel of your own existence. Busy is never the actual problem. A weak, porous boundary system is the true enemy. Hoard your time as if your actual life depends on it, because the brutal truth is that it absolutely does. You are carrying a massive, suffocating weight that was never yours to hold, mistaking emotional endurance for true moral virtue. A significant portion of your daily exhaustion does not originate from your own actions, but from the invisible emotional labor you constantly provide for free. People quietly use you as a dumping ground for their unresolved anxiety, extracting your energy through repeated venting disguised as intimacy. You have become a completely unpaid therapist for individuals who refuse to manage their own internal chaos. This extraction begins subtly under the guise of trust, making you feel needed and important. But a dark pattern quickly emerges. They endlessly unload their burdens. You absorb the impact, and when it is your turn to seek support, the space entirely vanishes. You allow their confusion and anger to consistently flood your mind, slowly eroding your own clarity and inner peace. You are literally living inside someone else's toxic mental loop, effectively paralyzing your own forward movement. You must draw a devastatingly clear line, fully accepting that you are solely responsible for your own inner state, not the chaotic emotional management of others. Unbounded emotional availability is not a sign of strength, it is a profound avoidance of the discomfort required to say no. You must ruthlessly guard what you listen to just as fiercely as you guard what you eat, blocking the mental poison from entering your system. You are entirely allowed to limit emotional access and definitively refuse to sacrifice your stability. Not all exhaustion stems from the physical labor of your hands or the hours spent at a desk. The most lethal fatigue comes from carrying emotional weights that were never yours to lift in the first place. You are currently leaking your vital energy through an invisible transaction known as emotional labor, which is stolen from you without any formal request or clear agreement. It happens in the shadows of long circular conversations where others use your empathy as a dumping ground for their unresolved chaos. Disguised as a plea for closeness, you have become a warehouse for the anxiety and anger of people who have no intention of changing, only of being heard. There is a dangerous psychological mechanism at play when you allow your inner world to be flooded by the turbulence of those around you. What repeatedly enters your mind eventually dictates the texture of your character, and by hosting the confusion of others, you're slowly eroding your own clarity. You mistakenly believe that your endless endurance is a sign of moral strength or superior virtue, but it is often just a mask for your fear of being seen as cold. You're suffering by proximity, trapped inside a mental loop that belongs to someone else, while your own peace is being systematically dismantled. You must ruthlessly establish a filter for what you allow into your psyche, recognizing that you are solely responsible for your own inner state and not for managing the wreckage of others. Compassion without a rigid structure is not a gift. It is a form of self-erasure that leads directly to total burnout. Start limiting emotional access by listening without absorbing and supporting without sacrificing your fundamental stability. The moment you stop being an infinite reservoir for their extraction, you will reclaim the power to dictate your own internal weather regardless of the storms outside. They don't ask for permission to unload their baggage. They simply say they need someone who understands, weaponizing your kindness against you. At first, this feels like an intimate bond or a deep level of trust, but you must look closer at the pattern of the interaction. They talk and release their poison, while you sit and absorb it. But the second you attempt to speak, the space magically evaporates. This is not a connection between equals. It is a calculated extraction, where they leave feeling lighter while you're left carrying a darkness you did not earn. Strong individuals often fall into the trap of believing that being available for everyone is the highest form of human achievement. In reality, this unbounded availability is a form of cowardice, an avoidance of the necessary discomfort that comes with setting a firm boundary. You are terrified of the silence that follows a no, so you keep yourself busy solving problems that are not your own. You have allowed your empathy to become a tool for your own exploitation, rewarding those who refuse to take responsibility for their own emotional regulation. You must return the weight of these unresolved problems to their rightful owners, understanding that your presence is not a license for them to remain stagnant. If a person's problems never evolve or transform into action, your support is not helping them, it is enabling their decay. Stop rescuing and start reflecting the responsibility back to where it belongs, even if it means stepping back from the relationship entirely. True care means maintaining your own stability so you can offer perspective, not collapsing into the hole alongside those who refuse to climb out. There is a predatory, subtle difference between those who ask about your choices out of genuine concern and those who ask to gain a foothold of control. Some people don't want to help you reach a better decision. They want to be a part of the decision-making process because influence feels like power to them. It always starts softly with questions about your plans or subtle warnings about your ideas, all wrapped in the seductive mask of just being worried about you. If you're not paying close attention, you will miss the moment your autonomy is hijacked. Over time, these persistent questions begin to follow every move you make, your career trajectory, your relationships, and the very pace at which you live your life. Without realizing it, your personal choices slowly transform into group discussions where you're seeking permission instead of seeking clarity. You're handing over the direction of your life to a committee that will never have to live with the actual consequences of your actions. This is a form of self-abandonment that dilutes your purpose and turns your path into a public project. You must recognize that unsolicited advice is rarely neutral. It is often a projection of someone else's discomfort with your growing independence or their own worldview. They advise more when your path stops resembling theirs because your growth creates friction with their need for you to be predictable and manageable. Cut off the supply of information that allows others to steer your life and return to the silence where your own reason can finally be heard. Your direction is your own, and you are the only one who truly pays the price for the road taken. The more you explain your decisions to the crowd, the more you are unintentionally inviting a debate that you never intended to have. Every justification you offer is a trap that shifts the authority away from yourself and into the hands of those who have no right to judge your path. You eventually find yourself no longer deciding, but defending your existence as if you were on trial for wanting to live on your own terms. A person of true strength does not defend their choices in the court of public opinion. They simply act. Seeking endless validation from the outside is a habit that systematically weakens your judgment and trains you to doubt your own instincts before you even act. You have confused external agreement with internal peace, thinking that if everyone approves, you must be doing the right thing. But true clarity comes from within, through isolated reflection, and it often requires you to appear foolish or irrational in the eyes of others. If you let others shape your decisions, you're also letting them shape the regrets you will eventually carry alone. You must learn to distinguish between the few who offer counsel based on your values and the many who offer commentary based on their own entitlement. Answer briefly, decide in the privacy of your own mind, and move forward with a quiet, unbothered resolve. When you take back the access to your decisions, you restore gravity to your choices and signal that your path is not up for negotiation. You are the sole author of your story, and the final decision must always rest in your hands, regardless of the noise surrounding you. The more you nervously explain your decisions to the people around you, the more you actively invite them to debate your existence. Every single justification you offer is a massive trap that shifts authority completely away from yourself and directly into the hands of a committee. You eventually reach a pathetic breaking point where you're no longer making deliberate life choices. You are endlessly defending your right to exist on your own terms. By entertaining their uninvited commentary, you are willingly placing yourself on trial in a courtroom where they act as the judge, jury, and executioner. You must ruthlessly differentiate between those who offer genuine counsel based on deep respect for your values and those who offer toxic commentary simply because they feel entitled to an opinion. Unsolicited advice is rarely neutral. It almost always comes heavily wrapped in fake concern, masking their deep discomfort with your growing autonomy. They question your trajectory more aggressively when you evolve because your undeniable growth creates massive friction with their desperate need to keep you predictable and manageable. This is not guidance. It is an active sabotage of your independence. When you constantly seek external validation, you systematically destroy your own judgment and train your mind to doubt itself before taking a single step. You have confused maintaining the peace with blind agreement, falsely believing that harmony requires your absolute compliance to their opinions. It is time to aggressively shut the door on their commentary and realize that seeking endless consensus is a coward's game. You must be completely willing to look irrational or foolish in the eyes of the crowd if it means staying fiercely loyal to your own path. Giving people unrestricted access to critique your decisions silently teaches them that the core foundation of your life is highly negotiable. You must aggressively take that access back, immediately restoring the heavy gravity and absolute finality to your personal choices. Your life path is absolutely not a public project subject to community voting, and you are under no obligation to consult the audience before making your next move. You have the ultimate right to listen to their words without ever handing over the steering wheel of your existence. The absolute truth that most people learn far too late is that once you allow others to shape your decisions, you inadvertently allow them to shape your deepest regrets. And when everything violently falls apart, those same people will absolutely not carry the crushing weight of those regrets with you. Guard your autonomy exactly the way you guard your bank account and your time, not because you believe you're superior to them, but because you are the only one who is truly accountable for the outcome. The ultimate response to their intrusive probing is to remain impossibly calm and completely non-confrontational. You absolutely do not argue, you make zero attempts to persuade them, and you drastically cut off the supply of oversharing. You answer their questions briefly, you make your decisions in absolute privacy, and you move forward with a quiet, lethal certainty. Those who genuinely respect you will immediately accept the boundary, while those who relied on manipulating you will push harder, instantly revealing their true predatory motives. True disrespect rarely announces itself with loud aggression. It slithers into your life disguised as completely harmless jokes that push the line just a little too far. It manifests as passive-aggressive remarks and calculated sarcasm that subtly diminish your worth, leaving you entirely confused and questioning if you simply imagined the insult. Because the attack is so incredibly subtle, you hesitate to defend yourself, actively rationalizing their toxic behavior by telling yourself it is simply not worth the drama. That agonizing moment of hesitation is the exact opening they need to permanently breach your emotional defenses. Disrespect heavily thrives on this precise ambiguity. When nothing is explicitly said to stop them, the abuser enthusiastically fills in the blank with their own narrative. They do not interpret your silence as noble restraint. They instantly assume it means you're weak, indifferent, and entirely willing to accept their abuse. Once they successfully cross that line without facing a severe consequence, they will absolutely cross it again and again. You must brutally eliminate the ambiguity that allows these parasites to thrive in the shadows of your interactions. Do not allow them to hide their malicious intent behind the cowardly shield of just joking or sarcasm. Forcing them into the harsh light of accountability shatters their illusion of control and immediately disrupts their deeply ingrained predatory patterns. It is your absolute responsibility to draw a razor-sharp line in the sand the very first time they attempt to test the waters of your compliance. Because you despise conflict and refuse to stoop to their chaotic level, you force yourself to endure the disrespect again and again and again. But this endless, suffocating endurance does not make you a saint. It rapidly mutates into a quiet, violent resentment that poisons you from the inside out. Anger that is continuously swallowed and held inward never simply disappears. It calcifies into a heavy, suffocating bitterness that violently distorts your judgment. You are actively drinking poison while desperately hoping the other person suffers the consequences. This severe internal corrosion fundamentally alters your entire personality, transforming your natural calm into an unpredictable, tightly coiled hostility. You start viewing every single interaction through a thick lens of suspicion, constantly bracing for the next subtle attack because you have proven to yourself that you will not fight back. The peace you think you're preserving is a complete hallucination. A peace that absolutely requires your constant self-erasure is merely conflict avoidance disguised as harmony. You must aggressively reject the deeply flawed idea that enduring pain makes you morally superior. True inner calm only exists when you possess the undeniable certainty that you will fiercely stand up for yourself the exact moment it truly matters. You are entirely allowed to protect your human dignity without descending into their emotional chaos. It is time to forcefully flush out the toxic resentment you have been hoarding and replace it with the cold, unyielding iron of enforced boundaries. The ultimate solution to repeated disrespect is never an explosive, screaming confrontation. It is the execution of measured, freezing clarity. You absolutely do not need to raise your voice, hurl desperate insults, or attempt to win the argument against them. You simply need to calmly and briefly name their toxic behavior directly to their face, entirely stripping away all emotional charge. Say exactly what needs to be said. That comment was entirely unnecessary. And let the heavy, uncomfortable silence do the rest of the violent work. This precise clinical response does something incredibly devastating to the abuser. It completely removes their camouflage and draws a thick, undeniable line between what you will and will not accept. You offer absolutely zero lectures, zero desperate explanations, and zero emotional reactions for them to feed on. You're calmly asserting your dominance over the reality of the situation, forcing them to painfully confront their own pathetic behavior. You remain completely grounded while they scramble to regain the upper hand they just lost. Pay extremely close attention to how they physically and verbally respond the moment you calmly assert this non-negotiable boundary. Those who possess even a shred of respect will immediately apologize and adjust, while the parasites who relied entirely on your silence will intensely resist, heavily deflect, or attempt to mock you. Their panicked reaction tells you absolutely everything you will ever need to know about their true character. Speak the exact moment the line is crossed, and violently walk away if respect is no longer on the table. Society constantly praises forgiveness as the ultimate display of moral strength. But when you grant unlimited forgiveness to the same recurring offense, it becomes a massive liability. You have tragically misunderstood this concept, choosing to keep violently exposing your mind to the exact same harm under the delusion that it makes you a noble person. It is not noble to stand in a burning building. It is pure, unadulterated negligence. You are actively funding your own destruction by refusing to close the account of the people who constantly rob you. You must face the brutal reality that some people absolutely do not change just because you generously forgive them. They enthusiastically repeat the exact same damage because you continuously allow it. Their initial apologies always sound incredibly sincere. They swear they did not mean it, and they promise it will absolutely never happen again. Because you are empathetic and fair, you foolishly hand them another chance, desperately believing that this specific moment will be the turning point of their character. But true improvement never arrives, only the predictable repetition of your pain. Every single time you manufacture an excuse for their repetitive, toxic behavior, you are silently destroying your own core self-respect. You are actively sending a loud, undeniable message to your own subconscious that your boundaries are weak, your pain is highly negotiable, and their empty intentions matter more than your actual suffering. Kindness completely devoid of ruthless discernment is absolutely not a virtue. It is just naked vulnerability without a shred of protective armor. The most uncomfortable truth you must swallow right now is that a person's true character is exclusively revealed through their consistent, undeniable patterns, never through their desperate promises. The words they speak are incredibly cheap, and their dramatic apologies require absolutely zero effort. But genuine behavioral change is incredibly rare. You're expecting people to miraculously act completely against their demonstrated nature, operating heavily out of blind hope rather than cold, calculated clarity. When an individual consistently shows you exactly who they are through their actions, your ultimate response must never be naive hope. It must be immediate, structural adjustment. You suffer exponentially more than necessary simply because you stubbornly refuse to learn from the brutal evidence of your own experience. You are actively ignoring massive red flags in favor of a romanticized fantasy, choosing the warmth of a lie over the freezing cold reality of the truth. You must interrogate their actions with brutal precision. Do they take absolute responsibility without any deflection? And do they make measurable, sustained adjustments over time? If the answer is no, then they are simply resetting the exact same toxic cycle of harm, apology, relief, and repeat. Stop confusing your pathetic blindness with genuine mercy, and recognize exactly when your endless patience stops being a virtue and violently transforms into active self-harm. This agonizing cycle of repeated offense is absolutely not an accident. It is a highly calibrated system of emotional abuse that strictly relies on your continuous participation. You keep throwing your vital energy into the machine expecting a different outcome, while they effortlessly extract exactly what they need from you. As this cycle grinds on, something vital fundamentally breaks inside of you. You become overwhelmingly hesitant, heavily guarded, and noticeably smaller when you're around them. You're not shrinking because they hold incredible power over you. You're shrinking because your nervous system is constantly, exhaustingly bracing for their inevitable betrayal. You're living your life entirely in the agonizing anticipation of profound disappointment. You falsely believe that if you just forcefully walk away, it makes you a harsh, cold, and morally inferior human being. But you absolutely must reject this horrific emotional blackmail and realize that your primary duty is to preserve your peace, not to preserve a dead connection. Forgiveness absolutely does not require that you continue to grant them unrestricted access to your life, and understanding their trauma does not require you to remain exposed to their violence. You have the ultimate right to fully release your internal resentment while keeping the heavy iron door permanently locked. You are absolutely not obligated to sacrifice your current peace just because you share a long history with them, nor are you required to reopen your healed wounds just to prove that you're a kind person. The ultimate, unbreakable response to repeated harm is never explosive anger or dramatic revenge. It is total, permanent withdrawal. You execute this withdrawal quietly, calmly, and with devastating finality, offering zero public announcements, zero dramatic exits, and absolutely zero long explanations. You simply vanish. This deliberate distance is absolutely not a punishment designed to teach them a lesson. It is the ultimate protective fortress you build to save your own life.